Hello, nerds! Thank you for joining me here on Nerd News Clips. This is the second channel. This is the place for all of the short-form content as well as the individual sections and just generally speaking smaller things. If you are into the longer form content, youtube.com/generallynerdy is the place to go see that. With that out of the way, let's get into this. In the music section, this is going to be a pretty decent final episode for the season. But in the music news section, we have some music that I honestly was pretty excited to hear. A couple of songs that I'm super excited to tell you about. We also have one song that surprised me a little bit and one song that is kind of the expectation. So what am I talking about? Let's get into this. Also, Motorhead is coming back. We're going to get into that in the news and touring section. But first off, new music. So new music for the week as we come into the end of our season is starting things off. Everclear has put out a new track. The name of this track is The Year of the Tiger. Art Alexakis still knows how to write a damn tune. I am a big Everclear fan. I think this is great fun. I also think that it is really worth noting if you don't align with his personal politics. This one's going to be a little bit difficult to get past the lyrical content, but it is still a hell of a tune and still honestly works even in a political sense, even if you don't necessarily agree with him, because there's just some things in here that are fairly common sense when it comes to any politician, aside from the ones he's specifically talking about. But it is also super noteworthy that Everclear has released the 30th anniversary of their premiere album, World of Noise, which is the first one that got them signed, is now finally on streaming services. It is the 30th anniversary deluxe edition, which features six new tracks, and two of which were previously released as singles: Drunk Again and Nervous and Weird, the 2001 remix, which if you like Everclear, you'll like this stuff. You're gonna like this track regardless. It's just good alt pop, rock, whatever. Just go listen to it. Next on the list for new music, we have Vile Valo, who is the vocalist. From him, he has is releasing his first solo record called Neon Noir. This track is called The Forever Lost. I don't like him. I'm not a big fan of Vile Valo, but this was a little bit, it's still gothy, poppy, exactly what you expect when you think of the two words that are the title of this record, Neon Noir. That's pretty close to exactly what I was expecting based off the title, but surprised me with how catchy it was, which kind of is generally the state of any hymn tune as well. So this is, if you like him, you're going to like Vile's solo stuff because he is the beating heart of him. If you don't like him, you probably aren't going to enjoy this too much, unless you just are a sucker for a catchy tune, in which case you're going to dig this. So yeah, that's about as much of a recommendation as I can give for that. This next one comes from August Burns Red. We should have talked about this one last week, but I was sick. We didn't talk about any new music. So the name of this song is Ancestry. Comes off of their forthcoming newly announced album, Death Below. Album comes out March 24th on Sharp Tone Records. This song features Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage, and it is exactly what you want from that combination of vocalists. Actually, it's even more than that, because this is probably the most personal that August Burns Red has been with their lyrical content, and it's super heavy in that respect just because it is such a close issue with their vocal. I'm blanking his name and I apologize, but it is such a close issue with him and with Jesse, and just both of these guys have perfect time to shine. And of course, as always, the band, the musicians in this band shine like crazy. Their bass player, there is no rock bass syndrome with August Burns Red. These guys know exactly what to do and how to do it. And this song is just as crushing as ever, and lyrically probably heavier than they've ever been. Our final piece of new music for this episode comes from the band Vended. That's right, Shawn Crahan and Corey Taylor's kids are in a band together. It's called Vended. They put out a new single called Overall. We briefly mentioned this in the most recent live episode, and I told you we were going to be talking about it, so here we are. This is more evidence that these kids are definitely growing as performers and as songwriters. Their first track wasn't a big fan of that stuff. Pretty much everything off of What Is It, Kill It, their first EP, I did not necessarily, couldn't get behind it. This one, though, they're following their father's footsteps. I still think that Corey's, I again, can't remember their names off the top for the life of me, but I still think that Corey's kid really is trying too hard to be a lyricist like his father, which no one else can do in this world, let alone him, because he's, not as world experienced as his dad, but still a good, solid metal track nonetheless. Okay, let's talk about tours, and honestly, we don't have any actual tours to talk about. We just have some festival stuff that has been announced, so we're going to start at the top and then move our way through, and honestly, two of these festival announcements have very interesting bands as part of their main lineup, so let's get to that. We're going to start with Sick New World Festival. It is going to be May 13th in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Fairgrounds, Festival Grounds rather, and this one's super interesting because Coal Chamber, Des Fafara, who sings for Devil Driver these days, has announced that Coal Chamber is coming back and they are on the bill for this festival. Pretty huge. They are alongside their peers Korn and the Deftones, as well as Death Grips, KMFDM, System of a Down. The list is gigantic. It is absolutely, if you can find your way down to Vegas next May, then you are not going to regret it. This is a hell of a bill. You can find links down in the description to see the full list and all that jazz, and hopefully tickets if I can find some sort of ticket link. But our next one has to do with the Download Festival. Happens every year in the UK. This year is no exception. It is usually something pretty awesome. We have Slipknot, Bring Me the Horizon, Metallica, Evanescence, Parkway Drive, Disturbed, Pendulum, Architects, Ghost, The Distillers, Placebo, Alexis on Fire, Asking Alexandria, Motionless in White, I Prevail. The list goes on and on and on and on. This one is June 8th through 11th. It is in Donington Park. I am not going to be able to say the name of this place correctly. Leicestershire? Maybe? That is what we've got for Download Festival. And then the other really interesting festival announcement was Ozzfest. This is interesting on multiple levels. First of all, it's Ozzfest returning in a digital form for reasons. And so anyone will be able to get tickets. It's just a live broadcast. You just pay to have access to their server. That kind of is what it is. But it's Ozzfest coming back in digital form. And one of the big bands on this bill is Motorhead. Very intriguing, because if you don't know, the lead singer for Motorhead was one Lemmy Kilmister, and he has passed on something like 8 years ago, maybe even more. So the big question, because all that's been announced, no date for Ozzfest has been announced just yet. If I can find that, I will definitely be letting you know, hopefully by the live stream this Friday. But no date has been given, and no explanation has been given for the Motorhead situation, because are they going to find somebody else to do the vocals? Are they going to do some sort of like hologram Lemmy? Is it going to be like repurposing of live footage from previous shows when Lemmy was still alive? There's so many questions here. What the hell are they going to do with Motorhead for Ozzfest this year? As we get closer, hopefully we'll get more information and we'll be able to touch base on this once again when we return to regularly scheduled episodes, or even perhaps in the live episodes, who knows. But moving right along, kind of in the same vein, because going back to that Sick New World Festival, we have Flyleaf is also on that bill, which is not exactly breaking news, except for the fact that Lacey Sturm, the original vocalist for said band, is going to be returning to front the band once again. Now, it does seem like they're being specific with their vocabulary in this announcement, saying that it is just going to be for this performance. There's no tour that's been announced. Obviously, there's no new music that's been announced. It just seems that Lacey has come to an agreement with the band so that they will be able to do the festival. And I really hope, because that is honestly their first record is a record that I listened to probably for like 3 months straight when it first came out. It is surprisingly good if you are a fan of music, and aggressive music at that. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Either way, Lacey Sturm coming back to front Flyleaf, at the very least for some festival gigs, and that sounds pretty awesome to me. Next, we're going to talk about Slipknot. Shawn Crahan, one of the percussionists for the band and one of the band leaders, or the band leader, if you will, has done some interviews recently talking about the future of the band. This is relevant because their most recent record, which they're currently on tour supporting, so these announcements or these theories could be coming to fruition a little ways down the road. But if you don't know, The End so far is the final record on their contract for Roadrunner Records. So moving forward, they're no longer tied down by a record label. And now Shawn has been in these interviews saying that they're going to play with a new release style in that they're only going to be releasing singles and potentially not full albums. It seems to be the way of things. It honestly seems to be the way that their kids in Vended are doing things. Yes, they did release that one EP, but since then they've released a number of singles with no full-length album in sight. So that is kind of the way of the world these days. You could take the traditional route and do a full record and then release singles from already recorded music, or you could do the Protest the Hero route where you're recording an album, and as the album finishes, you release those tracks in order, or you could do the Tom MacDonald route and just kind of write a whole bunch of music, and as you're finishing that production, you choose a couple of those songs to release as singles. Once those have released, you build up you've built up interest in the product, not a fan base, because it's Slipknot. They have one of the largest fan bases in the community. But you build up the interest in the product, and then once you have interest in a full length, then you release the full length. That could also be the case. Very interesting to think about if Slipknot is adapting this, and Slipknot are kind of somewhere between the old guard and the new. They're not exactly old guard, but they've been around a little while, probably a lot too long to call them new guard. So interesting to see if they're adapting this release style, then perhaps the industry as a whole is about to make a pretty big shift. So very interesting to think about. That's what we've got there, though. So that leaves only music suggestions for the episode. And like I said, we're going to be talking about Flyleaf again. This is where we're talking about Flyleaf again. Music suggestion this week, and actually until we come back, is the Flyleaf record. Honestly, I'll probably make some suggestions in live episodes, but as it stands right now, Flyleaf's self-titled first record is definitely something you want to go listen to if you appreciate quality songwriting and rather aggressive stuff. If you can get past the religious imagery, then these are some solid, heavy rock tunes. They are not metal like we generally suggest on the channel, but they are absolutely solid nonetheless. So go check out Flyleaf's self-titled record. Once again, this has been just a brief segment from the larger episode that has been posted over on the main channel, youtube.com/generallynerdy. Go over there for the long-form content, or just subscribe here if you want it in bite-sized chunks. Thank you very much for joining me, nerds. We'll see you in the next one. Before we go, though, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.